2-sec silence. You know, for decades, the sheer difficulty of building software was, well, it was essentially the ultimate filter.
Oh, absolutely.
It kept the noise out. If you could actually code a complex system, you were basically a modern alchemist.
Right. But that era is, it's effectively over. I mean, we are looking at a fundamentally altered reality right now.
Yeah.
A single founder with just a standard laptop can now ship a fully functional MVP-like, a minimum viable product, in 48 hours. The execution bottleneck has simply vanished. It's gone.
Beat. And that leads to a really heavy realization. If execution is free, if, anyone can build almost anything over a long weekend, what happens to the intrinsic value of our ideas?
That is that terrifying vacuum is the defining question of our time.
Right.
Because when you remove the friction of creation, you don't necessarily get this utopia of innovation. You actually often get a psychological crisis.
Welcome to our deep dive. I'm deeply grateful you are sitting here with us today to explore this shift. We're unpacking a truly fascinating document today.
Yeah, it's a great one.
It's Max Ann's March 2026 guide titled How to Find Non-Consensus AI Startup Ideas.
It's such a profound piece of writing because it captures the exact technological zeitgeist we're living through right now.
It really does.
It moves past all the hype and just asks, well, what happens to the human mind when infinite leverage becomes the default setting?
So here's our roadmap for today's exploration. First, we're going to examine the death of the engineering moat. We really need to understand the mechanics of what happens when software creation becomes instantaneous.
Right.
Then we'll wade into what the author calls the Sea of Sameness.
Which is rough.
It is. It's the catastrophic trap of derivative thinking. And finally, we'll unpack a very specific framework from Y Combinator for finding those billion-dollar outliers by building what the rest of the world just dismisses as toys.
I love that part. So let's start with that first paradigm shift in creation. Yeah, let's do it. The fundamental physics of building a tech company have just entirely inverted. And the source points directly to the mass adoption of high-reasoning foundation models.
And we need to be very clear about what is actually happening under the hood here. We are not talking about like an enhanced spell check for your code. We're talking about agentic coding tools. Things like Cursor, Claude, Lovable.
Right. Let's break down the mechanics of agentic for a second.
Please do.
In the past, an AI was just a sophisticated autocomplete. You typed a line, it gets the next word.
Yeah.
But agentic tools operate with autonomy.
Which means tools that act autonomously to plan, write, and debug code.
Exactly. They don't just write a line. They read your entire repository. They understand your architectural intent.
Wild.
They proactively debug their own errors, and they construct entire functional systems while you sleep.
2-sec silence. I actually have a vulnerable admission to make here. I still wrestle with feeling like my traditional coding skills are becoming obsolete.
Yeah, I hear that a lot.
I mean, I spent years learning syntax. I really prided myself on tracking down a missing semicolon at 2 in the morning.
It's a grind.
Yeah, it felt like craftsmanship. It was like hand-carving individual bricks to build this beautiful house.
The grief of losing that craft is incredibly common right now. You spent a decade mastering a physical and mental motion, only to realize, well, that motion is no longer the bottleneck.
Right. It feels like standing in a field with your beautiful hand-carved bricks, and suddenly someone drops an infinite brick printing machine right next to you.
Wow. Yeah, that's exactly it.
The value has completely shifted. The market no longer rewards the labor of making the bricks. The value exists entirely in the architecture of the building.
And let's push that analogy further, because the machine isn't just printing the bricks. It's testing the load-bearing wall.
Yeah, right.
It's routing the plumbing. You are no longer constrained by the physical exhaustion of laying the foundation. You're only constrained by the limits of your vision.
But, and this is a big but, this introduces a terrifying new dynamic. When execution is essentially free, you have absolutely nowhere to hide.
Nowhere.
You cannot blame the compiler anymore. You can't tell investors that the server architecture took 6 months to provision.
No, because the barrier to entry has dropped to absolute zero. This means anyone with a fleeting thought on a Friday afternoon can manifest it into deployable software by Sunday night.
I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of a founder right now.
Okay.
If speed is not my competitive advantage anymore, my entire psychological anchor is just gone. What do I even measure my worth against? I mean, how does this extreme speed change the psychological pressure on founders?
Well, it forces a massive identity crisis.
Yeah.
Historically, founders derived their self-worth from stamina. They loved the grind of building.
Right, the hustle.
Exactly. But now the struggle is entirely cognitive. The pressure is no longer about raw physical endurance. The pressure is about the depth and uniqueness of your worldview.
So speed is commoditized. The real bottleneck is now human imagination.
That's it. And human imagination, when it's faced with infinite possibilities, is actually quite fragile.
We tend to freeze.
We do. And that paralysis leads us directly into a very specific, troubling phenomenon.
Right. Because building is now instant, we have inadvertently created a massive traffic jam, a global traffic jam of completely identical ideas.
And the data and references is really sobering.
Let's hear it.
If you look at 2025 industry data, roughly 65% of all new AI startups are just clones.
Wow. 65%.
Yeah, they are what the industry calls wrappers.
Let's define that clearly so we understand the architecture. A wrapper is basically a simple interface just passing questions to an existing AI.
Exactly. Mechanically, it looks like a real business, right? You build a sleek website, you design a beautiful onboarding flow, but under the hood, you are simply routing user text to a massive foundation model like OpenAI's infrastructure, and then displaying the answer back to the user.
Right.
You are not generating any novel intelligence of your own.
And this creates what the guide refers to as a sea of sameness.
It's a hyper-saturated landscape. I mean, imagine being a venture capital firm right now.
Sounds exhausting.
You're looking at 1,000 pitch decks a week, and 900 of them are using the exact same underlying brain.
Yeah.
User attention is completely fragmented because the App Store is just flooded with identical clones.
But let me calmly push back on this for a second.
Sure.
I look at some of these wrappers, and they are actually incredibly useful.
They are.
Aren't they necessary to bridge a very real gap between complex, intimidating AI models and everyday users who just want a simple workflow?
Oh, they absolutely offer immediate utility. They do solve a workflow problem today.
So why does the source use such harsh language? Why call them fatally derivative? If they help people right now, shouldn't they be considered valuable businesses?
We have to separate short-term utility from long-term defensibility.
Okay.
They are useful to the user today, yes.
Yeah.
But they are fatal to the founder's long-term survival. Think about the underlying mechanics. If your entire business model relies on bridging a gap with a simple interface, what happens when the foundation model updates its own interface?
Right, and if OpenAI just adds a new button that does exactly what your startup does, your entire company evaporates overnight.
Poof.
No.
Gone. You have absolutely zero structural advantage. You are essentially renting a tiny plot of land on the side of an active volcano.
That is a vivid image.
You might build a beautiful house there, but the moment the volcano shifts, you are wiped out.
Wow.
And when 65% of the market is enthusiastically building on that volcano, it represents a massive failure of collective imagination.
It is a deeply human response, though. It goes back to the philosophy of mimetic desire.
How so?
Well, when faced with an infinite horizon, we look over our shoulder to see what our neighbor is doing. We subconsciously copy their desires. We choose the perceived safety of the herd over genuine, lonely innovation.
Exactly. We copy what appears to be generating status for others.
Right.
But in a world operating on 48-hour development cycles, copying simply guarantees your own rapid obsolescence.
If I'm listening to this right now and feeling a knot in my stomach because my current project might just be a wrapper, how can a founder honestly self-diagnose if they are trapped in the sea of sameness?
You have to ruthlessly audit your core value proposition. Ask yourself this: could a smart teenager with an internet connection using Cursor and Claude recreate my entire business logic over a long weekend?
Oof.
If the answer is yes, you do not have a defensible company. You merely have a temporary feature.
If someone can copy it in a weekend, it's fatally derivative.
That is the harsh reality.
Yeah.
You have to find a way to escape that cycle completely.
The anxiety of infinite choice and hyper-competition can completely paralyze a builder.
Completely.
We actually need to pause here for a moment and consider how we protect our mental architecture in this environment.
It's somewhat.
In a world of infinite noise and constant exhausting acceleration, taking a moment to center your mind isn't just a luxury. It is a foundational necessity. Aura provides a sanctuary for your thoughts, helping you cultivate the kind of deep, uninterrupted focus required to build truly non-consensus ideas. You cannot outthink the crowd if your brain is vibrating at the same anxious frequency as everyone else. Aura gives you the mental clarity to step back, observe the sea of sameness, and calmly decide to walk in the opposite direction.
That's vital.
Beat. So if 65% of startups are trapped in this derivative cycle, struggling against that anxiety, how do we actually escape?
The guide points us toward a very counterintuitive solution.
Okay.
We cannot just build faster. We must completely change our philosophical definition of what is valuable.
Uniqueness of thought is the new moat.
Yes.
To explore this, the source brings in some heavy hitters, Dalton Caldwell and Michael Seibel from Y Combinator.
Right, and Y Combinator acts as the ultimate laboratory for human ambition.
They really do.
They've funded thousands of startups. They possess this massive historical data set on what actually survives the crucible of the market.
They suggest that founders must develop a non-consensus mindset.
Yes.
And the ultimate goal, if you want to find a billion-dollar outlier, a true paradigm shift, is to build something that the rest of the world completely dismisses as a toy.
Whoa. I mean, imagine scaling back and looking at a multi-billion-dollar, hyper-competitive industry.
Yeah.
Everyone is wearing suits. Everyone is using massive spreadsheets to optimize margins. And the actual winner is the person holding something everyone else perceives as a toy.
Huh.
That is such a powerful psychological vantage point.
It challenges everything we were taught about serious business.
Completely.
Let's expand our analogy from earlier. Think about how we construct reality. While everyone else in the tech ecosystem is desperately trying to build a highly optimized corporate skyscraper, you're over in the corner. You're building a weird Lego spaceship.
And the people building the skyscraper are looking down at you. They think you are wasting your leverage. They're optimizing their supply chains, and you are just connecting mismatched plastic blocks.
But here's the mechanical difference. The corporate skyscraper is optimizing for height using known blueprints. It is built for the physics of today.
Right.
The Lego spaceship is testing entirely new physics. By the time the skyscraper is finished, gravity in the tech world has fundamentally changed. And suddenly, only the spaceship can fly.
And this is not just a poetic metaphor. It is a recurring mechanical pattern in the history of technology.
Give me an example.
Look at the first personal computers in the 1970s.
Yeah.
The massive mainframe companies looked at them and laughed.
Right.
They were dismissed as underpowered toys for soldering hobbyists.
Or look at the early internet. It was considered a slow, text-based toy for academics sharing research papers.
Exactly.
Why do we consistently dismiss the most profound technological shifts as frivolous?
Because they lack immediate, obvious business utility. They do not fit into a quarterly OKR. They don't generate immediate ROI for middle managers. When something's a toy, you engage with it purely out of curiosity.
Yeah.
There is no corporate mandate to play.
You are playing. And play is arguably the purest form of human exploration.
It is.
It's exploration completely devoid of performance anxiety.
And that absence of anxiety is the crucial mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
When you are not stressed about optimizing for next quarter's revenue, your mind can actually wander into unexplored, highly risky territory. That is exactly where non-consensus ideas live.
Let's define non-consensus clearly for a second.
Sure.
If an idea is consensus, it means every rational actor in the market already agrees it is a good, profitable idea.
Right.
And if everyone agrees, the 48-hour MVP rule dictates that 1,000 people are already building it right this second. The alpha is gone.
Exactly. Non-consensus means that highly intelligent, rational people look at your project and think you are entirely wrong.
Yeah.
They think your idea is silly. They think you're wasting your talent on a toy.
I am curious about the defensive properties of this strategy, though. Why is a toy the perfect camouflage for a massive breakthrough?
Because it acts as a natural repellent for the corporate immune system.
Oh, I like that.
Massive companies and hyper-competitive, status-driven founders demand quick validation. They want immediate prestige.
Right.
They will absolutely not invest millions of dollars and allocate top engineering talent into a project that makes them look foolish at dinner parties.
So true.
It gives you an invisible force field. It affords you the time and quiet space to iteratively compound your weird idea into something unstoppable.
Toys lack immediate business logic, so they repel the standard corporate copycats.
Precisely. By the time the consensus crowd finally realizes your ridiculous toy is actually the foundation of a tectonic shift in human behavior, the math has changed.
It's too late.
It is entirely too late for them to catch up. You own the new physics.
2-sec silence. We have journeyed through some incredibly dense territory today. Let's take a moment to slowly reflect on the broader implications of this guide.
It really demands a complete recalibration of how we value our own time.
The fundamental friction of the universe has shifted. For decades, the hardest part of software, the ultimate filter, was simply how to build it.
Yeah.
It required deep, esoteric technical knowledge.
Yeah.
It required massive capital to buy servers. It required agonizing months, if not years, of manual labor. The friction was deeply physical and structural.
And we relied on that friction.
We did.
That friction acted as a dam. It kept the Sea of Sameness somewhat manageable. You couldn't just copy a company over a weekend,
right,
because it cost $2 million to try.
But now, in 2026, the infinite brick printing machine is running at full capacity in everyone's bedroom.
Yep.
The friction of how Oreo has dropped to zero. The dam has broken. So the hard part of innovation has completely evolved.
Yeah.
The hard part is no longer execution. The hard part is having the profound courage to think weirdly enough about what to build.
It requires an almost uncomfortable level of self-trust. You have to trust your own idiosyncratic, deeply weird curiosities. You have to be willing to look incredibly foolish in the short term to the people whose respect you used to crave.
Because if you refuse to look foolish, the math is unforgiving.
Very.
You end up as just another sleek wrapper in the sea of sameness. You become a completely interchangeable commodity, waiting for an API update to erase your existence.
I genuinely think everyone listening to this right now needs to critically examine their own workflows.
Yeah.
Examine the side projects you've been holding back on because they don't seem serious enough for a LinkedIn update.
I completely agree. And I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to carry with you today. Look around your life right now. Look at your browser tabs. Look at your weekends. What is the strange piece of technology or the weird little idea that you find yourself playing with purely for fun?
Right.
What is the one thing you constantly dismiss to your friends as just a silly toy?
Pay very, very close attention to that specific thing.
Because in a world of 48-hour MVPs and endless identical wrappers, your weirdest, least profitable hobby might just be a most valuable, impenetrable moat.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us in the deep dive today. Take care of yourselves out there. We will see you next time.